Hello. Thanks for inviting me today, and thanks for remembering what we're celebrating this month and the importance of it. This center actually was a big part of my own personal healing. When I moved back to Grand Rapids from New York City in about 2005, 2006, I had not come out of the closet to my family yet. So one night we opened up a bottle of wine and we were looking over the lake, and I started crying, and then my mother starts crying without knowing why I'm crying. And I told her about myself and told my dad about myself. And fortunately, my family, even though we grew up fundamental Christian, it was in a very loving, kind Baptist church, and my family was really accepting and loving and cool of me and my coming out process. So I probably could have come out a long time ago. But when I did, I joined a group called Gays and Faith Together in Grand Rapids, and they gave me a printout of 20 LGBT affirming churches. And I'd had two patients from the Spring Lake area recommend that I try. At the time, it was Christ Community Church. And then I met a woman at a networking event, and she said, "You should try Christ Community Church." So I did, and it was great. It was the first time I'd ever heard of a church being officially LGBT affirming. It was just so healing, just walking in and knowing that people weren't going to be judging me or looking down on me. Because I think even if people don't know that you're LGBT, I think sometimes if you grow up in a conservative background, you feel like people know and are judging you, especially in a Christian environment. So this place was really healing in my early development. Unfortunately, I met a guy in Saugatuck, started dating him, and started going to the UCC church in Douglas. So I didn't stay too long, but maybe if you guys had found me a boyfriend, I would still be in the member of your congregation. My mom did also ask me if I was dating real estate or if I was dating the guy. So um, all the Christian groups that Valerie mentioned that are gay and Christian in the Pride Center, I'm still members of those. I'm just not on the board anymore, but that's my fault because I was really messy in my editing of that before she gave it. So today, what I want to talk about is the outsider and the other. And I think that this has come up a lot in our culture and our country in the last couple of years, especially, and it's come more to our attention. And many have experienced being the other and the outsider, and also maybe seeing other people as more of an outsider and the other. And then how it really came personal to me is I still consider myself a member of Mars Hill, but I recently moved to Gun Lake and I joined a little LGBT affirming Episcopal church of like 15 people, and it's been an awesome experience. But while at Mars Hill, I love Kent Dobson's messages and his spiritual retreats. There's a few guys here that we go on the spiritual retreats also. And I went to Israel with Kent, and he has a story that he tells that he calls the naked bloody man. And while I heard this story, Kent said that there were 5 things about that experience that was just read to you about the swine and the man, that a Jewish rabbi should not have been around a Gentile, somebody covered with blood, in a Gentile cemetery, surrounded by pigs, and naked. So here's 5 things that Jesus was doing wrong, that he should not have been around, just even associating being close to somebody. And so when I heard that story, I thought, wow, I kind of feel like I'm the naked bloody man. And I feel like a lot of LGBT people, especially LGBT people from Christian and backgrounds, feel like they are the naked bloody person or the outsider. And then it seemed like every place we stopped in Israel, Kent had another story about how Jesus had reached out to the other, like the woman at the well, or just different people that he should not have been around. A woman that's menstruating continually, because Leviticus is full of a man's not even supposed to sit in a chair where a woman has sat who is currently menstruating. So there were lots of places throughout the whole Israel visit where I was like, wow, Jesus really not only said to love the outsider, but sought after and found the outsider. So that's kind of what prompted me for this. Last night I actually had a dream. I'd never been to your news center. Well, actually I've been to a Bob, who was on staff here. He invited me to a fundraiser here for counseling, and I think it was a wine tasting in the center here. So So I have been here once, but I haven't been here since it's been C3. But I dreamed last night, and I walked in, and Rob Bell gave me a big hug, and Paul Moore gave me a hug, and Kent was up here. I kind of knew what it looked like because I had watched some videos. I wanted to see what I was getting myself into. And he his usual, hello, everybody. And then it was weird. When I walked into the sanctuary, I woke up from the dream. So I know Kent's having a DreamWorks and Wilderness retreat this summer, so maybe I'll talk to him about that. So I kind of feel like sometimes the other feels, like the little kid with his nose up against the glass looking and watching everybody else have fun. I remember when I was in 5th grade, the playground was very gender specific. I wanted to play with the girls that were making little figures out of grass, but it was for girls only. The boys wanted to play whatever they like to play, like a kickball or football, things I had no interest in. So I would have a book and I would sit behind the pine tree and just read my book and kind of watch everybody. And I felt like I was watching everybody have fun. So I feel like sometimes that's what the outsider feels like they're looking and watching everybody have fun. Kind of like when I was dirt poor in college, and I would walk by and I'd see people eating at restaurants. I'd be like, wow, I wonder what that'd be like to actually eat in a restaurant. And I think that sometimes, especially in the LGBT community, you can feel like you're the shunned, and that you're not only not in the in-group, but you're despised, or that there's a disdain for you. And I know that a lot of this is getting better, hopefully, and young people tell me in my office that this is really no big deal at all. But for some people, and for some young people, it still is a really big deal, that in certain communities or cultures that they are still experiencing a lot of rejection by their family and their friends and by their tribe, their church that they go to. And that's part of the work at HQ is of trying to, and True Colors, of trying to help reduce homelessness with the LGBT youth community. And there's a program in town that uses also the family acceptance program, and that's where you help family members who a parent may not be quite sure what they think on the topic, or may even take the Bible in a more traditional, literal way, but keeping those families together and preserving them so that the child or the youth doesn't feel like they have to move out of the house, or that the parents don't feel that they have to show tough love and kick the youth out of the home. So that's some of the work being done, and there's people in this community that are part of HQ and about the True Colors Project too. One thing that helped me while growing up is at our Baptist church, which was super loving and kind, none of the clobber verses were ever mentioned. I think heterosexuality was assumed, but there was never anything spoken about against homosexuality at all. But we had a huge over-the-top map of Israel. And we were always taught that we were an extension of Israel. The New Testament was an extension of Israel. And we were taught that the Jews were a peculiar people, and that God wanted them to be a peculiar people, and that we too were peculiar people. So I feel like that prepared me for being gay and Christian, allowing me to already be a separate, peculiar person. And I feel like that kind of gave me confidence to just be myself, and searching out for truth. And when I started searching out for truth, the internet hadn't even been invented. So I read books like What the Bible Really Says About Homosexuality, and found other research information out there. I remember my first experience was I talked to an Episcopal priest, and he said, no, I believe in grace, and I don't believe in taking the Bible literally. And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, this guy is so liberal, and he is of the devil. I have to get out of here. But it did just start planting the seeds for me to do research and finding out what is out there on those clobber verses, and that was a big part of literally saving my life. And so in tied with the other and the outsider, I want to look at like hospitality, because both Jesus and in the book of Ezekiel and other parts like Isaiah, when it talks about Sodom and Gomorrah, it doesn't even talk about sex or homosexuality. Well, sometimes it talks about sex, but not homosexuality at all. And Jesus didn't mention sex. He talked about greed and not taking care of other people and being inhospitable. And so also looking at Jesus and in the Middle East, and with things that are going on in Grand Rapids right now, of trying to bring together people to the table of eating, that a lot of happened during eating times. And when we were in Israel, they talked about that a lot too, is that we in the West have kind of forgotten about that. I mean, I have so many families that don't even eat any meals or dinners together. And I feel like it can be really healing and bringing back community for us. I just heard a researcher during Laugh Fest talk about that. What they found in their research is a big part of the depression in America is our lack of community and that kind of lack of communal togetherness. And that even though we have like social media, it doesn't really connect us as far as community and being hospitable to each other and with each other. And then in Matthew 24, Jesus talked about bringing people to the table and not judging people by the way they were dressing or by their status, and of that we are all equal and to be hospitable to everyone. And so I keep thinking about that, about hospitality, and that Jimmy Carter and Billy Graham said that really the sin of Sodom and Gomorrah was inhospitality. And I just want us to kind of think about that of how to be more hospitable to each other, especially in these times right now where things are so divisive and we have such extreme differing views right now in some ways. And Leslie, in the inquiry group, which I wish I had something like that to go to. I live over an hour away now, but it was just so neat to get different perspectives and different thoughts on how to handle our own self feeling like the other, and how to help other people and show love to other people that may have differing views than what we have, or people that we just don't even like. And Leslie brought up about how sometimes the rejection of the other is really related to our own pain or our own fears inside of us, and that we may have to first work on our own fears and our own pain inside of us before we can really show complete love to the other and the outsider that seems different than us. So then I wanted to look at, like, what does it really mean to belong, and what does it mean to be invited in, and what does it mean to cast people out, both towards ourselves, because I think sometimes we can be the cruelest to ourselves and make ourselves the outsider or the most critical of ourselves, with that kind of like that negative voice inside of us. And that I believe that the spirit and love and kindness can kind of, if we show it towards ourselves and if we show it towards other people, can be a very healing balm of protecting ourselves from that experience of being cruel to ourselves, but then also when we're tempted to be cruel to other people. Because communities like this and LGBT affirming churches, sometimes I think cisgender or heterosexual people have no idea how healing that can be. I mean, when I started going to Mars Hill, and every time I would go on to like a film festival or to the wilderness retreats, and people would just be totally LGBT affirming, or when I would tell them that my passion is helping people who come from Christian backgrounds who are LGBT, and they were totally supportive and on board. And people just don't even know how healing that is. You know, it's how every time that happens, you feel a little bit surprised and you feel like, wow, that's so cool. That's so great. And so I just want you guys to know that probably not only just for the LGBT community, but for everybody out there that feels like the other or the estranged or the rejected, that they're a very healing resource for them. And I know probably the majority of people here, if you go to a church like center like C3, you probably already feel a little bit like the other or different or peculiar people. I once had a very kind, loving massage therapist leave a brochure for me after the massage was done about how Rob Bell was bringing everyone to hell on a bus. So we too sometimes feel like the other at Mars Hill. But, you know, not every person especially in Southwest Michigan, who is LGBT or allows themselves to doubt or maybe not take the Bible as traditionally literal, or wants to have the confidence to maybe branch out away from their denomination or the way that they were brought up. Not everybody has that strength to do that or has that community to support them with that. So I'm just really thankful for places like this. And I think also looking at, especially with Jesus, is that when Jesus was around, the people that were the most religious, the most right, doing everything correct, the Pharisees, those were the people that Jesus seemed to be the most critical of. And I love Israel, but when certain people don't want to have any criticism of Israel, it really surprises me, because when you look at the prophets, God was the most critical and it seems like the hardest on his own, on Israel and on his own people. That I think that we can still hold ourselves accountable and hold places and people accountable and still be loving at the same time, because I don't think that Jesus or God or spirit in general wants us just to be passive or to not stand up for the underdog and the disenfranchised. I think that if you look at many different spiritual or even wonderful secular leaders and advocates, that they are out there fighting for the underdog. Uh, Organizations I like in town that are trying to bring together dialogue with different groups are like the Kaufman Institute, the Interfaith Institute, and the Colossian Forum. If like the Inquire group that we had this morning, if you're interested in something like that, the Colossian Forum brings together people from differing views and backgrounds on different topics. Like I've gone to one where you discuss ecology, climate change, creationism, the LGBT community. That's something in town. And I really like the Colossian Forum because they give guidance on how to have respectful dialogue at your center or at your church or at your place of business, of how to have a respectful dialogue on hot topics such as the LGBT issues. But I think sometimes we can also be criticized if we hang out with the other or the disenfranchised, like in the Bible where people ask Jesus, well, why are you eating with tax collectors and sinners? That sometimes that we can be criticized for that, and then that we, as Jesus did, then suffer from the hands of others that are judgmental in that area. But I believe in general that our brokenness brings us all together, because everybody has something inside of them. Everybody has some kind of pain or something that they're hiding or something that they've experienced or some worry of theirs. And like I find in my life that when I tell somebody that I'm gay, especially gay and Christian, then they'll tell me things that are bothering them in their life or that they're experiencing or painful things. That sometimes when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable or to tell people our secrets, then it brings us closer together. And that our pain and our brokenness can help bring us together as a community and with each other. And I think that whenever we draw the line in the sand, that spirit and love and Christ or whatever entity that is personally deep for you, it says, no, don't do that. Stop doing that. And it brings us back together. And that I also believe, things evolve and things change. Like all throughout the Bible, things have changed. Like even looking at different cultures, like they said, stay away from the Moabites. Don't marry the Moabites. Then Ruth, a Moabite, is in the line of Jesus and was told to marry. That I believe that things change. And looking at the LGBT community, when the Gentiles were first able to come into the fold, I think LGBT people can relate to that too, that not being kept out of the fold or the group like the Gentiles had been. And I believe also that you look at all the spiritual and secular organizations in the world, that they all have some form of the golden rule, of some form of do unto others as you had done unto you. Like, have you ever seen that poster that has like 20, even Sanskrit is on there about how every, even humanism of do unto others, treat people the way you would want to be treated, of loving your neighbor. And I believe that spirit is on our side and that things may seem more divisive and terrible right now in some ways, but I feel like spirit or the Holy Spirit is still doing something for some reason and some purpose, that maybe things are coming to light now that need to be addressed, or is bringing things to light that we wanted to just pretend didn't exist. That I know in my own community we thought, oh, Obama made everything all great and that we don't have to worry about anything and things are just going to keep getting better. Well, maybe things are not going to keep getting better unless we do something about it, and that we don't become apathetic about it. That I believe that all things happen for good. No matter what bad happens in our life, that Spirit can use it for our good, whether it's individual or for our community or for the greater good for our planet. And finally, I think that we can take actions on a daily basis. Like, have you ever gone to a store and you see like crabby, mean people, and then when you're nice and you smile, and then they smile and they're nice, and you're like, oh, wow, man, I thought you were really a mean, terrible person, and you're not. And then I think that sometimes if we see somebody who is marginalized or has experienced a lot of prejudice in their life, that if we can show kindness and love to them, or just do a little thing like just holding the door for them. In San Francisco, where they have the Golden Gate Bridge, they did research with people and asking them questions and finding out about suicide. And many of them said, like, if they just had one person say hi to them nicely that day or show any kind of friendliness to them, that they wouldn't have gone up to the bridge that day. Or people that didn't commit suicide, many of them, people would walk by on the bridge and say something kind and loving and supportive to them, and they didn't jump. That we may feel like we're insignificant, but I believe that we can really be used to do good for people just in tiny, small ways, and that we may not even realize what a big emphasis it can have in their life. And finally, if you have children that you would like to get a good resource for, there's a book called Church for All, Inclusive Church. It's a great children's book. It has an African-American pastor on it, and then behind him has LGBT banners hanging. And the book is all about not just LGBT, but about how we're all equal. We're all created in the image of Spirit, regardless of our gender, our race, our sexuality, our status in the world, and things like that. And that's a really good book for children. And I also like a program. It's called The Artist's Way. And one thing recently, a group from Los Angeles that has also come to the Lakeshore here and to Grand Rapids and to the Lakeshore, they'll take a different theme to write about. So, and with The Artist's Way, what you do is you just freely write for like 3 pages, and you ask yourself or your unconscious or the universe or spirit questions, and then those answers come to you. It's really changed my life for the better, where I've gone through something really hard or difficult, and I feel like the Holy Spirit or my unconscious or nature just brings me answers through that. And one thing that I would recommend, and that this group is doing right now, is that they are asking, like, how can we be channels of difference in the world, and how can we show love and kindness to help heal our planet, heal our country, and help heal each other. And I believe that when we do this writing, that information can come to us from another world or from internally from ourselves. So that's something I'd recommend to maybe do this week. I'm going to try doing it myself. But thanks for having me. I appreciate it. My mom always wanted me to be a pastor or a missionary, so I'm sure she's very excited that at 48 I've actually spoken at church. So thank you.